the most important group is that middle layer of operational leaders,
Yeah.
because that group of operational leaders are the people that are doing the work every single day.
Customer experience wisdom, a dash of travel talk. We've been cleared for takeoff.
The best meals are served outside and require a passport.
Welcome back, CX Passport travelers. Today, we get the chance to talk with Karyn Furstman. Karyn's got those experience chops built over 30 years with major brands like Safeco Insurance, JPMorgan Chase, and Bank of America, driving impactful CX strategies along the way. There's a kindred spirit between Karyn and me. Not only did we both work at WAMU, Washington Mutual, back in the day, there is a shared love of process and execution, which are my magic words, possibly my business love language, perhaps. Well, now as the founder and CEO of Customers First, Karyn focuses on building CX roadmaps, developing high-performing teams, and delivering measurable results. Her approach is all about breaking down barriers and creating meaningful connections with customers. I mentioned that WAMU connection. Karyn spends most of her time in that glorious Seattle area in the Pacific Northwest. Beautiful country up there and fantastic food. You know how much I love those two factors. I bet some of that sneaks in today's episode. Karyn, welcome to CX Passport.
Thank you, Rick. It's great to be here and great to talk again in another kindred spirit on a lot of the things that we're going to chat about today.
I've, as you had said before we hit record, didn't we talk like 9 months ago first? It may not have been that long, but this has been a long time coming. And so I've got a lot of excitement and eagerness to get into this. So I mentioned you and I share this heart for process. I joke that I've got a Six Sigma black belt and I actually earned it at Washington Mutual, and it's gone a bit gray from lack of use. You bring your lean, your process experience into your customer experience work. Why should companies be thinking with that lean mindset when they consider their experience design?
Yeah, it's a great question. And actually, I as well am a black belt and lean certified. I at B of A is where I got the Six Sigma.
Right.
But actually got lean certified when I was in the insurance business with Safeco Insurance, Liberty Mutual.
Okay.
And I think that in both cases, but particularly in lean, what lean is kind of core foundational element is designing things that the customer would pay for. And so as I got to know that world, and as I had built really a CX transformation and roadmap with the Safeco insurance organization over a number of years. And then we brought in the lean disciplines on top. It was almost music to my ears because it was truly building what we had designed over the last few years and embedding it into the operations of the organization. And so I think that it ultimately what it does at the end of the day is it takes CX and move it from what sometimes can be perceived and organizations can perceive it as an initiative or project and make it truly a way of working in the organization, which doesn't happen overnight, but I really, really am a huge proponent of some of those concepts that actually get embedded into the organization to drive truly a better customer experience.
Oh my gosh, you can tell I'm stuttering over my words because there's so much that you said there that got me all wound up. This idea of truly drive results and moving that actual thing forward. What is it that's particularly unique about lean that really drives that into that customer experience world? What's the kind of that tasty bit that says, all right, this is why we're actually able to get results out of customer experience because of a lean mindset?
Yeah, a couple things I would say. It is the fact that you are building processes, again, that the customer would pay for. And truly, the customer is helping you design what you are building. So that's number one in terms of really bringing in and making decisions and building products and services against truly what the customer would pay for. And there's methodologies underneath it that let you do that. The other thing that I would say is and this was really, really very powerful, is there's a method and a way that brings executive leaders into the process to walk the walk and not just talk the talk. So you think about things like in the lean language, go and sees. You're going to see the various sites and call centers and sales parts of the organization, but there's actual processes and flows that they have to follow. So it was wonderful to give them those tools. So I think it works both from the executive level all the way down to the frontline parts of the organization, as well as the back office, with a set of tools that truly drive that customer focus into the process.
Oh, I like that. And that theme of would the customer pay for it? I remember that fondly from those days, and that absolutely fits of, hey, look, if the experience isn't something they pay for, then aren't we kind of wasting our time here? And that makes a lot of sense. You mentioned also that idea of it helps kind of bring that leadership level into view, leadership, and brings them into that exposure, into that. In that kind of same vein, if customer experience isn't its own C-level discipline at a company, and that sometimes we see our C-level, sometimes we don't. I'm more inclined to see customer experience housed inside of operations. Longtime listeners, viewers know that's my bias, is that project management, process improvement background. Yet more companies, I feel like I see it more often in marketing than operations. Why are companies choosing the marketing path, and how would you design things?
Yeah. If I could count the times that I've had this conversation, I get asked, it's probably one of the most frequent questions I get asked is, where should customer experience fit? And my first answer that I would say is that, honestly, there's no right or wrong answer, and it has to depend on the culture of the company and kind of where the power, if you will, or the power core of where like a lot of decisions potentially get made. I am a huge proponent, however, of it being in operations, which probably is no surprise to you based on what we're talking about.
Kindred spirit.
Yes, I was fortunate enough in the multiple times that I led customer experience transformations. I was fortunate enough to report to the COO, so I had a seat at the executive table and in the operations. I have recently seen more organizations that are putting the role into marketing. And I think it just you need to figure out a way to make it work. My biggest caution is make sure that the organization understands that it's not a marketing project and it is different than marketing. And so really being clear about what it is and what it isn't, I think is important, because again, if I had my druthers, I would absolutely argue for operations. But you need to really understand where the organization is. And if that decision is made, you as a CX leader have to work within that, but make sure that it becomes built into the DNA and the fabric of the organization, which is a little harder sometimes, but it can be done for sure.
Hey there, CX Passport travelers. I want to let you know about CX Passport Live. CX Passport Live helps brands amplify their event's impact with the power of live, in-person podcasting. Brands partner with CX Passport Live at their on-site event to help excite attendees, reward high-value customers, and convert potential customers. Bring a new level of energy and excitement to your event and amplify your brand's impact with CX Passport Live. Learn more at cxpassportlive.com. Now, back to the show. I want to come back to that. There's a theme that you've said that I want to get to first, and you mentioned in slightly different ways, but this idea of make sure the organization doesn't see it as an initiative and as a marketing initiative, or even at the beginning, you were saying just customer experience is this kind of project to be done. Have you, I guess you must by design, you must have seen that. Why are companies falling into that trap, and how can a CX leader make sure that they aren't falling into that trap?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think some of it starts with, as a CX leader being brought in or being promoted into the organization. So there's an internal and an external way. And sometimes what I see is that there are, high talent individuals have gone through multiple jobs and they are put into a CX role. And I think that they need to just, again, understand truly what it is. And so what I would say in this case, and whether it's in operations or in marketing or in product or in revenue office, the first thing that needs to happen, Rick, is an understanding of what it is and what it isn't. And I think that is where really education with the organization, not just what customer experience is, but what the role, me in that role, what we or me and my team is going to help the organization do. And that is really important because it level sets, but you need to continually reinforce that as you start building your vision and your roadmap for what you want to be. But I think that is something that is really, really important. And sometimes I see missed in terms of the work. And then what happens sometimes is because there isn't that clarity, that education, and then the clarity with all parts of the organization, up, down, and across, then what happens is there's one piece of the work that's being done. So I'll give an example. The Voice of the Customer program, which is truly one of the biggest things that customer experience has been when you think about, right? Like, we need to listen and act on our customer feedback. That's just one piece of an overall strategy. And so sometimes what I've seen is if that work is done, and let's say a Voice of Customer program is launched, the organization gets tired because they're not exactly sure what else is going to need to be done to truly drive it into the operation. So it kind of goes back to this whole, how do you actually build it into the DNA? And then from the comment I just made, I think it's also about building a strategy and a roadmap so the organization can rally behind it, which is critical.
There's a lot in like that idea of the and act, right? The VOC program, if it is just the listen side of it, well, that's great. You got the voice of the customer. It's the and act, and that's the tricky, or can be the tricky part of weaving it into the organization. So let's take that. I'd set up a scenario earlier where the CX leader wasn't a C-level, didn't have that seat at the table. That happens plenty as well. So what are you saying to that CX leader? How are you advising those CX leaders that they don't have that seat, but they're still responsible for influencing the company, educating, all the things that you said about getting it embedded in the DNA? How do you help them find success?
Yeah, it's a great question. And it is, I think I'd start with understanding, again, where that CX individual reports. And so the leader of the CX director or what have you has to be also part of the solution. So in the example of marketing, right? Oftentimes a CX leader, as you're saying, we see will be in the marketing organization. It will report to the CMO or the head of marketing. And I think one thing is making sure that his or her boss understands and helps define that vision and mandate with them, because they're going to be the person taking it forward many times to their peers at the executive team. I also have suggested that CX leader is on the ongoing agenda for the executive leadership team on a monthly basis. So that they're still seen as visible. It's not about the person being visible, it is about the work, right? And I think that why that becomes critical is because those executive leaders have to also empower that CX leader to work with the folks on their teams, right? And so that's where it gets really important about breaking down some of those silos, but not being the person that says, well, I'm doing this because so-and-so said so. So it is, I will tell you, it is definitely harder to drive this work forward when you don't have that visibility in that seat. So I coach on trying to build that visibility into the existing rhythms of business that the organization has as they build that strategy again and that roadmap, and constantly providing updates and inputs into that roadmap as well.
When you the input, the updates, the seat at the advisory, the leadership, that I want to poke at that just a little bit. If I'm walking into that, what have you seen be the most successful as far as what is brought to that meeting when it comes to influence? I'm at that. I've got my monthly session. How can I really bring change or bring influence in an organization without that formal authority?
Yeah, that's a big question, because it's before you get to that phase, right? It's the initial work of what are we trying to do here, and kind of going back to that level setting of definitions about what this is and what this isn't. And working across the organization, I'm always a big believer, because you never come into any organization, whether you're internal or external, you're never coming into a blank slate.
Right.
So I'm a huge believer in not coming in and throwing everything out and starting again. So you need to first do an assessment of where the organization is today and understanding kind of your base level of CX maturity. So I start with an understanding and a listening session. And it becomes very much about then defining those objectives up front. So first defining a strategy in terms of what do we want to be and how are we going to get there, which is what that roadmap is. So I just say that because that upfront work is so important, because that becomes your North Star of what then you are bringing forward to the organization as you go into some of those different meetings, whether they're monthly business reviews or staff meetings, et cetera. What I would say is it's less about kind of update on projects, although you want to show that you're making progress against a roadmap.
Right.
But you're constantly bringing that voice of the customer into those meetings, but not just for the sake of bringing the voice in. You're talking about it in the way of, going back to our friend, the operations. What are we doing today that is driving delight for our customers? Because I always want to make sure that we're talking about positives as well. And then what are we doing to drive pain with our customers? And that becomes a part of, on the VOC side, the huge opportunity for where you're trying to act on the feedback and fix and prevent it from happening in the future. And that's truly where bringing some of that work forward to cross-functional teams, if there are bigger things that need to be fixed, but really showing how you're driving improvements, whether it's along a journey, if you've defined the journey steps, and or through what the customer voice is telling you.
So let me take that another step further. I mentioned not having a seat at the leadership table, but imagine you've been brought in, you customers first, right? So every company values their customer, but they might not necessarily have a customer experience team. So in a scenario where you've been brought in, either in your pre-consulting experience or your actual consulting experience, have you seen this idea of experience being a thing that needs to be done, but there not being a team involved, and you've seen it be successful? And if so, how were those companies making success there?
Yeah. I have always been a believer and seen that the initial work, especially of a one person, is to be, and I love the word orchestrator, because I believe that as the CX leader, with or without a team, what you're doing is you're bringing people together against a common objective, and you're orchestrating that work going forward. I think it is very difficult if there is, let's just say in your example, the organization wants to drive more successful customer experience and they want to do it without anybody. That is a little more difficult. And you might say, like, because you really don't have a champion. So if you're talking about, team versus no team, I've worked in and coached with organizations who are individual contributors in that role, and it absolutely can be done. I've never been a big believer, honestly, of big customer experience teams, because as influencers and orchestrators, what we should be doing is I call it teaching the fish to fish, right? We're trying to build the capability into the organization. And what I always used to say to my, then small team or small teams in the different organizations is, and this makes some people nervous, is we're working our way out of a job. Because could it be done in the long run where you don't have like an actual one person? Ideally, but it's a journey and it takes a while to do that. So you're orchestrating, you're teaching, you're watching, you're coaching to see them do it on their own versus having a huge team that is doing everything from a central place.
Karyn, wow, that's some powerful words there. The idea of there's not a lot of folks that would advocate, hey, I don't really like the big teams. I want the small, and I definitely see the logic in what you're describing. Of it can become a behemoth in and of itself, and there's probably a lot of companies that have the big teams. Like, well, those are the ones that go do that, and so I can see the value in that small team. Karyn, I want to take a little break with you here. It's a chance for us to stop down in the First Class Lounge. So I want to invite you here into the First Class Lounge. We'll move quickly here and have a little bit of fun. What is a dream travel location from your past?
Easy one for me. For a big milestone birthday, I went to the Maldives. It was something I had dreamed about for my entire life, and it was exceeded all my expectations, and I had pretty high ones. Incredible.
Man, I see so often like that's kind of like the ultimate trip, especially in some of the mileage points groups that I'm like, they're like, okay, so it's 365 days, so you can get your over the water bungalow with points. I have to imagine that just was stunning. How long did it take y'all to sort of plan that trip?
Oh, planning about not too long planning. The getting there from the
Yeah.
West Coast, on the other hand, was quite lengthy. But I'm a diver, and it was just to be in those waters, and diving was a dream come true for me.
I'm very jealous of some of my other hemisphere friends when they talk about places that they get to go to a lot easier than those of us in the Western hemisphere get to go to. So I can appreciate that long flight. And hopefully you had a chance for some lounges along the way. What about a place you haven't been to yet? What's a dream travel location you've not been to?
There's quite a few places, but I think next on the bucket list, if you will, is Australia and New Zealand. Another hard places to get to.
Right.
But I definitely want to. I haven't planned it yet, but I definitely want to make some strides to get there in the next couple of years.
I like that. Yeah, oddly enough, I haven't been there either, and I'm looking forward to getting down under, if you will, at some point. I mentioned Pacific Northwest having great food, so don't let that bias you here, but what is one of your favorite things to eat?
So first I'll say it's anything spicy. I'm a spice hound. I absolutely love spicy food. I think I've ruined my three boys because I, it's cooked and definitely like have sponsored a lot of spicy foods. I like the Thai food, Chinese food, anything of like Asian, Indian, but probably Thai food, I would say, is one of my favorite in terms of kind, but anything spicy, even if it's barbecue or anything, it's got to be spicy. It probably ruined my taste buds.
I like that. I actually, of all things, I had there was a football game that my son and I went to on Monday. It was a championship game. And so we went someplace to eat before, and it was a grilled cheese brisket sandwich. And the guy said, well, but we normally include jalapenos in there. Do you want them? I'm like, yeah, I want the jalapenos in the grilled cheese sandwich. And it was good. So I'm with you on the spice there. Have you had the chance to go to Thailand? Speaking of Thai food?
No, that's another one on the bucket list, right behind Australia and New Zealand. Yeah.
Just do both. Stay on that side of the world and just do both.
My 25-year-old son has been, and I haven't. So I should
I think it's a good
earn the right to go.
Okay. What about growing up? Was there something you were forced to eat that you just absolutely hated as a kid?
I really like most all foods, and there was really never anything I was forced. I will say I have a strong memory of not forced, but trying a raw oyster for the first time with my parents. We were on a trip in Vancouver, and it was something about the consistency or something. They didn't force me, but I tried it, and it was not something that I liked as a child. I actually do more enjoy them now as an adult, but that was something that had lasting memory on me.
That would be a very hard item to accept as a kid. Yeah, I love them as an adult, but I can think kid brain would be looking at it going, nah, I'm not putting that in my mouth. No way. Karyn, sadly, it's time to leave the lounge. What is one travel item, not including your phone, not including your passport, that you will not leave home without?
My Kindle. I'm a huge reader, so my Kindle for sure.
Karyn, got to have something to keep you entertained on that long flight to Australia. So I can see how the Kindle made that list. That makes a lot of sense to me. I want to get really tactical here. You were a customer experience leader, and you were a customer experience leader at some significant brands in that corporate world. What elements did you find just particularly vital to your success in those roles? How did you create real results and real influence?
Another great question. First and foremost, it was really important to tie the work we were doing not just to loyalty results like an NPS or a CSAT score. Of course, that was one piece of it, but it was early on showing the value and the opportunity for the work, and translate that into and continue to monitor results, financial results. So in other words, what we did early on was said, okay, if we want to move forward and increase our NPS, What does that mean in terms of retention? What does that mean in terms of,
Mhm.
in our case, cross-sell, and some of those key business metrics, and set targets and showed how those things work together and actually drove those improvements, because it's speaking to the organization in the language and the things that are really important to them. Not that loyalty is not important, but oftentimes what I see is people say, we want to engage our organization by taking
Right.
NPS from 50 to 60. And it's like, what's the excitement for me as an employee to get up and go to
So,
work every day? Not
yeah.
a lot, right?
Yeah.
So I think that is one. I think the other was, one of the others was, I alluded to it before, but it was to really kind of get the organization on all levels involved in the work. Whether I was an executive leader, like a chief product officer, who we had become one of the sponsors of one of our key journeys, the renewal journey in insurance, but to have them understand and make it real for them. So at the executive level, at the frontline level, of course, they're seeing it every day. They're dealing with the customer happiness and pain points every single day. So like how to make it real for them.
Mhm.
But probably the most important group is that middle layer of operational leaders, and kind of goes back to our process discussion,
Yeah.
because that group of operational leaders are the people that are doing the work every single day. So it's really important to engage all three of those kind of layers, if you will, cross-functionally in the work, and being part of the solution, again, which goes back to some of the lean concepts that we talked about earlier.
Gotta hit all of that. That idea of making I really like that focus on that middle layer, and there's an element of frontline in that as well when you talk about actually doing the work, because it's one thing to have a journey map crafted somewhere off in a conference room. It's another thing to see it executed on the front lines like that. And that idea of tying it to the idea of tying it to financial results makes a lot of sense to me. It gets really hard. Did you find, let me ask it differently actually. How did you approach discovering the tie between a customer experience improvement, a customer experience measure, and something that the CFO would care about?
I made the CFO my best friend. I mean, honestly, like worked with them.
Episode over.
I worked with them very early on to kind of help define, or in multiple cases, because I've done it, whether it's the CFO or the
Yeah.
folks on the team, to say, um, this is what we're trying to accomplish. What are the business metrics that are most closely tied? And, in insurance, and even in banking to that degree, there you've got, your retention efforts that
Mhm.
are really important, and kind of that core concept around, um, acquiring a new customer is way more expensive than keeping one. And then you want to keep them and grow them. So really talking about it and working in the language they understand. So working with them together around saying, this is what we aspire to do, and making them also, whether it was product officer or financial officer, making them part of the work. I think, as I mentioned, on one of the renewal experiences that was huge, right? Like the renewal journey in and of itself, if you think about insurance, is huge. Making this the leaders, so in that case, the chief product officer, this business sponsor of that work, because they were the ones that were saying, ooh, we're not sure how we want to evolve this renewal experience. So
Yeah.
by making them the sponsor, it really brought them along the journey, for sure.
Okay. I really like that idea, and certainly I love the idea clearly of, hey, look, I was just making my best friend. But in that theme, what I'm hearing is this idea of co-creating, right? It's not, a
Mhm.
lot of times CX leaders, CX teams think about, how can I present this to, rather than how can I craft this with. And I think that's something that you're really drawing out here that makes a lot of sense to me.
That's how I feel I've been successful in my whole career.
I love
Whether
it.
it be a true operational role, I've led huge operation organizations and had a lot of influencing roles. And in either case, you have to influence and work collaboratively together.
That makes a lot of sense. Karyn, I want to close out. We're almost out of time here. It's a slightly different question. It's not really about customer experience, but you've done I did a similar evolution. You've done an evolution where you spent years, decades inside the corporate world, and then moved into the independent world. We're in this time, you and I are recording this in January of 2025. People are thinking about new visions, new ideas, new improvements, big changes, all that, setting visions for themselves. What is it about corporate America that inspired you to go out on your own and create your consulting business?
Yeah, I think I had been in corporate America for quite a number of years, and I felt as I was approaching a point in my career where I said, I really want to be able to give back what I've learned. The things that I've done that I feel are successes, the things that were challenging, kind of the scars on my back. And I want to work with people, new leaders, whether they're new coming up in their career or they're established leaders who are taking on additional responsibility, whether it be CX or customer experience and employee experience, and be able to work with them and coach them to build successful organizations to drive kind of CX into the organization, but make it part of the business fabric. And as we talked about, and truly bringing some of those lean concepts and helping them with their even continuous improvement efforts. So I feel like between my operations and lean experience as well as customer experience, it's a great combination to make it real for those leaders that I'm working with and coaching to be successful in not just their role, but to help make their organization successful and to make their own personal career rewarding. Because I've found a career when I kind of got into customer experience by happenstance about 25, 30 years ago, I found a career that's my passion career. And so I'm very, very excited always to work with people to build their capabilities in that sense.
That's awesome. We're going to leave it right there, Karyn. I love ending right there. Karyn, if folks wanted to get to know a little bit more about you, about Customer First, just your approach to customer experience, hey, talk process shop, or even, hey, what's the best restaurant in Seattle? What's the best way for them to get in touch with you?
I have Customers First website. It's Customers First, F-U-R-S-T, which is a play on my last name, just FYI. And it's Karyn at customersfirst.com. And feel free to reach out to me at any time. I'm on LinkedIn, both personally as well as my business. And
Awesome.
My website is there as well. So would love to chat more with folks. As you can tell, I have a true passion for this work. So thanks for having me today.
Yeah, no, I loved having you on the show. I will get listeners, viewers, scroll down, click the link. Don't even hit pause. You can just click that link. You're taken to Karyn's LinkedIn profile or to Customer First's website. Karyn, certainly I was looking forward to a conversation with a fellow process and operations enthusiast. I also appreciated going further into those spaces around influence and the real tactical elements of how you as a leader really drove actual, honest to God, tangible results. This has been an absolute delight for me. Karyn, thank you for being on CX Passport.
Thanks, Rick. What a delight.
Thanks for joining us this week on CX Passport. If you like today's episode, I have 3 quick next steps for you. Click subscribe on the CX Passport YouTube channel or your favorite podcast app. Next, leave a comment below the video or a review in your favorite podcast app so others can find and enjoy CX Passport too. Then head over to cxpassport.com for show notes and resources that can help you create tangible business results by delivering great customer experience. Until next time, I'm Rick Denton, and I believe the best meals are served outside and require a passport.